I want to tell you something that nobody in Miami talks about out loud. You know that guy. You've seen him. Nice car, clean outfit, posts the right stuff. Looks like he's winning. And then one thing goes wrong. One unexpected bill, one bad month, one emergency, and the whole thing falls apart. I'm not talking about some fictional character. I'm talking about people I grew up with, people in my city, people who from the outside looked like they had it figured out, and were quietly one car repair away from not being able to pay rent. And here's the part that messed with me the most when I finally started paying attention to this. I was almost one of them. My name is Jonathan. I'm 27 from Miami. And this video is about the illusion, the gap between what people look like and what their bank account actually says. And more importantly, what to do about it before life forces you to find out the hard way. Let me give you the national picture first, because I want you to understand this isn't a Miami problem. Miami just makes it more visible because this city is uniquely good at rewarding the appearance of wealth over the reality of it. Here are the numbers. As of right now, in 2026, PNC Bank just released their annual financial wellness report. 67% of American workers say they are living paycheck to paycheck. 67%. That's up from 63% last year. And this isn't a survey of struggling people. This is full-time workers at companies with more than 100 employees, people with steady jobs, and people who look fine. But here's the number that really stops me every time I read it. 40% of Americans, 4 out of every 10 people, say they could not cover a $1,000 emergency expense in cash right now. Not without borrowing. Not without putting it on a credit card. Not without calling somebody. Just straight cash out of savings. 4 in 10 cannot do it. And it gets more specific in a way that should concern every young person watching this. A Deloitte survey found that 73% of Gen Z workers, people our age, people a few years younger, are living paycheck to paycheck. 73%. Nearly 3 out of every 4 people in our generation are one unexpected expense away from a financial crisis. One vet bill, one car problem, one medical situation. 1 month where something just goes sideways. That's the margin most people are operating on. And they have no idea because from the outside, everything looks okay. Now let me bring it back to Miami because this is where it gets personal for me. Miami has a specific problem that takes this national situation and puts it on steroids. And the problem has a name, the flex. If you grew up in Miami or you've spent any real time here, you know exactly what I mean. This city has an almost supernatural relationship with looking wealthy. The cars on Brickell, the outfits in Wynwood, the tables at Levy, the Instagram posts outside the Fontainebleau. And I want to be really clear, I'm not hating on any of that. Miami is a beautiful city with a culture that celebrates success, and that energy is part of what makes this place magnetic. I love it here. But there is a difference, a critical difference, between celebrating success and performing success you don't actually have. And in Miami, that line gets blurred constantly. You know what one of the biggest industries in Miami is that nobody talks about? Exotic car rentals. You can rent a Lamborghini in Miami for a day, a Ferrari for a weekend, a Rolls Royce for a photo shoot. There are companies whose entire business model is renting luxury cars by the hour to people who want to look like they own them. And I'm not judging that business, honestly, respect to the hustle. But think about what that tells you about what's really going on. When a city has a thriving industry built entirely around renting the appearance of wealth for social media content, that tells you something about the gap between what people project and what people actually have. I know people in Miami driving $60,000 cars who cannot afford a dentist. I know people in this city paying $3,000 a month for an apartment in Brickell who have less than $500 in savings. I know people who bottle service every weekend, and I mean every weekend, who have not thought about an emergency fund one single time in their adult life. And look, I say all of this without judgment because I understand the psychology. I grew up in the same environment. When everyone around you is projecting a certain image, the pressure to match it is real. It's not stupidity, it's social survival instinct. Your brain reads the environment and says, this is the standard here, and then quietly starts making financial decisions based on keeping up with that standard instead of building toward actual security. Morgan Housel calls this wealth is what you don't see. The real money, the actual financial security, is invisible. It's the account nobody knows about. It's the investment that's been compounding quietly for 5 years. It's the emergency fund sitting there doing nothing exciting, just being ready. The car, the outfit, the table, that's wealth that already got spent. That's not winning. That's the performance of winning. And Miami is the greatest stage in America for that performance. Now here's where I need to slow down and get honest with you. Wait, because I told you at the top of this video that I was almost one of these people. Let me tell you what I mean by that. A few years ago, I was running a marketing agency. And before you picture some big operation, it wasn't. It was me, a few contractors, a laptop, and a client base of HVAC companies I was helping get leads online. Heating and air conditioning businesses. Not glamorous. But it was real revenue. It was growing, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was actually building something. And here's what happened when the money started coming in. And this is the part I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, but I think it's important. My spending evolved immediately to absorb it. Not in some dramatic, reckless way. In the quiet, totally understandable way that happens to almost everyone who gets their first real taste of income. A nicer apartment, a better car, going out more. Saying yes to things I used to say no to because I couldn't afford them. None of those individual decisions were crazy. But combined, I was building a lifestyle that required my agency to keep performing at a certain level every single month with no margin for error. I was, by the technical definition, living at the edge of what I was making, even while making more than I ever had before. And then one month, I had a client situation go sideways. A big account, delayed payment, contract dispute, the whole thing. And I remember sitting with my actual numbers for the first time in months. Like really sitting with them. I was not just glancing at my bank app, and realizing that I had built a life that could not absorb a 2-month disruption. I had revenue. I had a growing business. I had the right image, and I was fragile. That moment scared me more than any moment I can remember when I actually had no money. Because when you have no money, you know you're vulnerable. You can feel it, you're alert to it. But when you have income and you've built a lifestyle around it, you get comfortable. And comfort is where people get got. That was the moment I started studying this stuff seriously. Not just tactics, not just how to make more money, but the actual psychology and philosophy of financial resilience. What does it actually mean to be stable? What does it mean to have real security versus the feeling of security? And what I found when I started digging was that the framework I was missing wasn't complicated, but almost nobody was teaching it in a way that hit for someone my age, in my city, with my background. Here's the framework. I'm going to walk you through it slowly because I want this to actually land. There are 3 types of financial positions. Most people only know about 2 of them. The first position is broke. This one everybody knows. Income doesn't cover expenses. Every month is a crisis. You're borrowing, you're behind, you're stressed all the time. This is a painful place to be, but it has one advantage. You know you're there. There's no confusion about the situation. The second position is what most people think is the goal. Comfortable. When income covers expenses, maybe a little extra. Lifestyle feels sustainable. No immediate crisis. This is where the paycheck to paycheck numbers are coming from. Most people who are living paycheck to paycheck don't feel broke. They feel okay. They feel like they're doing all right. They're in position 2, but position 2 has a fatal flaw. It has no buffer. One emergency, one disruption, one bad month, and position 2 becomes position 1 immediately. The third position is what almost nobody talks about, especially for young people, and that's anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is a term the philosopher Nassim Taleb wrote about that I think about constantly. It means not just being stable, but being structured in a way that you actually benefit from disruption. Your financial life is set up so that a bad month doesn't break you. It just activates your buffer, so that losing one client or one income stream doesn't blow up your life. It just puts you on a different gear while the others keep running. Most people in Miami, most people in America, are in position 2 thinking they're in position 3. They feel stable right up until the moment they're not. The question I want you to sit with after this video is simple. Which position are you actually in? Not which position does your lifestyle suggest you're in. Your actual position. If your largest expense disappeared tomorrow, how long could you maintain your life without changing anything? 30 days? 90 days? 6 months? That number, that runway, is your real financial health number. Not your income, not your credit score. Your runway. Most Americans have less than 30 days of runway right now. Most people in Miami have even less because the fixed costs are so high. And most people have never even calculated this number because calculating it requires confronting a reality that's uncomfortable to look at directly. Let me do the math with you one more time, because I think seeing the numbers makes this real in a way that abstract concepts don't. Say you make $70,000 a year in Miami. That's above the median, so you should be doing reasonably well, right? Take home after taxes, roughly $4,400 a month, maybe $4,500. Rent in a decent one-bedroom. Let's say you found something at $2,300 because you did your research. You're at $2,100 left. Car payment, $600. You're at $1,500. Insurance, gas, phone, to utilities, $500 combined if you're disciplined. You're at $1,000. Groceries, $450, which is actually conservative for Miami in 2025. You're at $550. Now you're sitting at $550 a month. Call it $500 after small things you forgot to count. $500 a month is your entire margin. That's your savings, your emergency fund, your investing, your fun, your unexpected expenses, all of it, $500. Now tell me, what happens when the AC unit in your apartment blows out? In Miami, in August, the landlord says it's your responsibility and the repair is $800. What happens when you have a fender bender on I-95, which if you drive I-95 regularly is not a question of if, it's a question of when? And your deductible is $1,000? What happens when you get sick and miss 2 weeks of work? None of these things are disasters. These are just life. These are normal, predictable, inevitable things that happen to everyone. And on a $70,000 salary in Miami, an income that most people would consider solid, any one of these events puts you in a hole that takes months to climb back out of. That's position 2. That's the illusion of stability. And in this city, $70,000 with a nice apartment and a decent car looks like winning from the outside. This is exactly why the numbers say what they say. It's not that people aren't working. It's not that people don't care. It's that the math of living in 2025, especially in a city like Miami, leaves almost no room for the normal chaos of real life. So what actually changes this? Because I don't want to be another video that just makes you feel bad about the situation without giving you something real to work with. The first shift is going from income thinking to margin thinking. Most people optimize for income. How do I make more? How do I get a raise? How do I find a better job? And income matters. I'm not dismissing that. But the breakthrough moment for me was when I stopped asking, how do I make more, as the primary question, and started asking, how do I widen the gap between what comes in and what goes out? Those are different questions, and they lead to completely different decisions. Income thinking leads you to work harder inside the same structure. Margin thinking leads you to restructure entirely. And restructuring is uncomfortable because it often means making decisions that look like downgrades from the outside. Smaller apartment, older car, less going out, while actually being massive upgrades to your real financial position. In Miami, that's a psychologically hard move to make, because this city will make you feel like stepping back looks like losing. But the people who are quietly building real wealth are making exactly those moves. Not because they don't value the good life, but because they're playing a longer game than the people around them. The second shift is building what I call a crisis buffer before you build anything else. Not investing, not a business, not a course. Before any of that, 3 months of your fixed expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account doing nothing except existing. And in Miami, that's probably $15,000 to $20,000 depending on your situation. I know that sounds like a lot. It might take you a year to build, but that buffer is the difference between position 2 and position 3. That buffer is what lets you make good decisions under pressure instead of desperate decisions under pressure. Because here's what I've learned about how opportunities actually work. And this is something I saw clearly when I ran my agency and then made the transition to building digital income streams. The best opportunities in life require you to be able to say yes quickly and absorb the uncertainty of a new thing without your survival being on the line. The person with a 3-month buffer can take a calculated risk. The person with $500 left at the end of the month cannot. Not really. Well, not without their fear completely dominating the decision. The buffer isn't just financial protection, it's decision-making protection. It's the thing that separates reactive choices from strategic ones. And the third shift, and this is the one that changed my entire trajectory, is building something that isn't just dependent on one income source. Here's the brutal, honest truth I learned running an agency. When you have one client base, one income stream, one thing that has to keep working, you are not actually in business. You are self-employed with better branding. Your security is still external. It still depends on one thing going right. Real financial resilience comes from multiple streams. Not 10 streams. That's overwhelming, and it's what gurus tell you to sound impressive. 2 or 3 intentional streams. Your main income, one thing you're building on the side, and over time, assets that generate income while you sleep. I sold my agency, not because it wasn't working, it was, but because I had figured out that the ceiling on what I could build was limited by my own hours. And I knew there was a different model, one where what I knew, the marketing, the systems, the experience, could be packaged into something that didn't require me to show up every day to keep generating value. And the thing that blew my mind when I made that transition, the knowledge I had was already worth money to other people. I didn't need to learn something new. I needed to learn how to package what I already knew. That's the conversation I'm building this channel around. Because I think most people watching this have more valuable knowledge than they realize. They're just still trading it by the hour instead of packaging it and selling it at scale. We'll get into that in depth in future videos. But I want to plant that seed right now, because I think it reframes everything we just talked about. Here's where I'll leave you. The gap between how people look and what they actually have is wider in 2026 than at almost any point in recent history. 67% of American workers paycheck to paycheck. 40% couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency. 73% of Gen Z workers running on fumes. And in Miami, in a city that runs on the performance of wealth, that gap is invisible by design. I'm not asking you to stop appreciating the good things in life. I'm not asking you to move to Homestead and become a monk. Miami is incredible and you should enjoy it, but I am asking you to know your actual number, your real runway, not what your lifestyle suggests, your actual financial position if one thing goes wrong. Because the people who build real things, real security, real wealth, real freedom, they don't build it by making more money first. They build it by getting honest first, about where they actually are, about what's real versus what's performance. Marcus Aurelius, again, the man ran the most powerful empire in the world, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In a city that is selling you more at every corner, every red light, every scroll, the most countercultural thing you can do is decide what enough actually looks like for you. Not for Instagram, for you. I'm Jonathan, I'm 27, I'm from Miami, and I'm done performing stability I don't have, and done building a life that can't absorb real life. If that's where you are too, subscribe, drop a comment, tell me your number. How many months of runway do you actually have right now? I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.